Hi again, everyone. It is Georgia and Florida week. There's not a whole lot more you need to say than that. That gets everybody's butter churning, so to speak. That sounds like a Russ Tanner expression, as a
I
matter of
like it.
fact.
I
We
like
got
it.
Russ and we got Shock. And if you're watching this, if you're not listening only, if you're watching though, Russ is already on his way to Jacksonville, so he's so excited.
I am 100% headed south right now. Not
He
quite to
is
Jacksonville, but yeah.
He is ready to go. Guys, good to see you again. Georgia goes into this week 7-0, number one still. Although, on the back burner, you hear a lot of Georgia's not going to be number one when the CFP poll comes out because of this and because of that. And I'm tired of hearing that. Georgia keeps winning, and right now they're the number one team in the country. Um, but the chores are going to get a little bit more difficult as we get into the end of October here and November. The schedule certainly ramps up, and that starts with this week with the Florida game. Russ, we'll start with you since you're already on
Yeah.
your way to Jacksonville. Uh, what are your thoughts on the Gators?
Yeah. Hey, Florida week is different, right? Shock and I can tell you there's just something always different on campus. It's fall break, students are out, you're at the facility all the time. And then when we were there, obviously our record against Florida had not been great for a long time. I kind of had a freak out moment a couple of years ago. My wife and I were nervous about the Florida game. My daughter, who was like 11 or 12 at the time, said, "Why are you nervous? We don't lose to Florida." It's like, "Oh, what's wrong with you?" Like, you've got to remember how big of a deal this is for us. So, Georgia fans are always nervous playing Florida. And you look at this Florida team, we'd like to make fun of them because they got beat by Utah. That's the game most of us saw on TV. They didn't look great. They played against Kentucky and got boat raced. But you take out those couple of losses, Florida's sneakily been better than we expected them to be this year. Is that the Mertz kid playing quarterback for them? I think he's number 2 in the SEC in passing. They've got a really good running game. So at some point, they're going to figure it out. They've got too much talent not to. So it's going to be a matter of if they show up, and are they the Florida that play Kentucky, or are they one of these Florida teams that have rolled, especially in the running game? And then who shows up for the Dogs? Is it the team that boat raced Kentucky or the team that struggled against South Carolina? So, man, you never know what's going to happen in Jacksonville, Florida.
Yeah, Russ, I think you're spot on, man. It's just been, I guess we've been ingrained for so many years because we played in that game that, whew, every time we get down there in Florida, just things seem to happen and we can't find a way to get dubbed. But I think the tide has changed over the, past few years, obviously with Kirby being there. And this is a Florida team, like you mentioned, that's been a roller coaster themselves. They've had some big wins. They've had some ones that they've struggled on. But you look at Graham Mertz, man, I think it all starts with the QB. Graham is a guy who got 12 tubs and 2 interceptions. He's completing over 70%, and he's doing a good job of just distributing the football. Kirby talked about it this week. They do so many different things at the line of scrimmage, a lot of what we call the eye candy, where guys are going everywhere, shifts and motions, and you can get lost in it at times. I think it's going to be a big game for those kind of situations because they got to have to find ways to produce positive yards in this game because of our defense has played, especially against opponents like this. So this is a Florida defense that loves to get after. They are a lot better than I think people came in thinking about. I was talking with Sid Ben Fran this week, and he was just talking about how versatile their guys are up front, how many guys they play, the depth they play with their particular D lineman in front seven, the different pressures they bring. So Florida is absolutely going to bring something to the table that the Dogs have to be prepared for. And obviously, when it's 50-50 split down the middle, that's a huge deal. Not many, rivalries are like these where it's so fun to be a part of, or anything could happen on any given Saturday.
It always made it different, too. The 50-50 thing is interesting to me because as a player, it was the only place we ever got to experience constant crowd noise. If you're doing well, your crowd is up and at them. If you're on offense, usually at home game, your crowd gets quiet, but then the Florida fans get up and at them. So for tough, close games, it's a crazy environment because the noise never stops. It's not rocking like Neyland Stadium or down in Death Valley in Baton Rouge, but the noise never stops. So it's a really awesome place to play football games.
Chuck, I think you mentioned, something crazy always happens in Jacksonville, or it seems to. What are some of the things that you guys experienced on the field that maybe fans didn't know about? What's going on down there on the field in the piles and all of that? Now we've seen some of it before. We've seen some eyes being poked, eyes gouged through the face masks and that sort of thing. But you guys have any personal experience with that kind of stuff in that game?
Yeah, I remember you get pinched, you get your shoelaces untied. Like, I mean, just little weird stuff that could happen while you're on the ground, a little extra push off from a guy here and there. There've been plenty of times where a guy's tackled me or something, and they're using my head as a way to get up. It's just those little small things that kind of irk you a little bit when you're playing in these kind of ball games. You're always looking for a little edge on both sides. And I'm sure our guys have done similar things to those dudes wearing blue helmets. I'm sure Russ has said a few choice words to a lot of defensive linemen over the years. So anything almost goes in this game until you get caught. So I think that's how it goes.
Yeah, I've never been as shocked as pinched before, so I don't know if I get pinched. But yeah, there is most of the teams we play, the Auburn, South Carolinas, Tennessees of the world, you have some institutional dislike for them, but typically, the guys you get along. For some reason, there's more of an edge when you play Florida. We typically just didn't like those guys, and they didn't like us. So yeah, you push up off of them getting off the pile. You try to put a hand in their throat a little bit when they're not looking. You try to do a little bit of things to let them know it's going to be a long day, and they try to do the same thing. But man, like that stuff stinking fires me up. Like that is what, especially as big nasty lineman, you love games like that where it's a little bit chippy. So I hope we see some of that.
I'm glad we
Let's
could
talk.
choke you up with that one.
Yeah. Let's look at our guys right now. We've got some key injuries apparently as we're doing this. As we're recording this, that may change by the end of the week. Who knows? But if it's as it is right now, what are your concerns about Georgia? With obviously Bowers is out, Truss is maybe up in the air, and Mims is still working his way back. So that changes the look of the offensive line if it remains that way. And there's some other injuries too. What are your thoughts on the Bulldogs as we go into this week and we're not necessarily at 100%?
I'll let Shock take Bowers because it affects their game a little bit more. But on the O line, we talked about early in the year the idea of an offensive line gelling, meaning that they can react to what a defense does at the same time with the same answer without having to communicate it verbally. And as the guys have been injured throughout this year, you've seen Truss move from guard to tackle. Now he's out. Mims has been hurt. Blasky's been hurt. You've had 3 or 4 of those 7 or 8 deep rotation guys that have missed significant time. And against a team like Florida ain't Vandy, big dog. Like they've got really good players on the D line. It doesn't matter how productive they've been as far as the team win-loss record. I'm telling you, they have really good players, big, strong guys that will attack you. And if you don't know what to do very, very quickly without having to think about it, and more importantly, if the guy beside you doesn't know what you're going to do, it ends up being a long day. So I think as big of a deal as Bowers being out is, and it is a huge deal, don't get me wrong, having the offensive line being in flux a little bit is huge because Carson Beck has been able to stand in the pocket without being in a ton of pressure, and he's thrown stinking strikes. If he starts getting hit a little bit, it's a different deal for Georgia.
Yeah, and Russ, to kind of piggyback what you just talked about the old line. I mean, Georgia's only given up 6 sacks all year, and I talked to Sam Van Pran. He was angry that they gave up 6 sacks. I was like, bro, y'all don't play 7 games and only 6 sacks. But that just tells you the standard that old linemen have about protecting the quarterback, which I love. But you think about Bowers and him being out. And I think I go back to Vandy when he went down. And I remember the coaches talking about, let's not worry about the guys who we don't have right now because we have all, talked about adapting to when guys are not in the game. And this is why you recruit. This is why you go out and have, all these 4 or 5-star guys and you have multiple guys who can play. Now, as we know, nobody can obviously replace number 19. He is a different breed, and we know that. But there are a lot of talented dudes on his offense that can get it done. And Carson will find ways to get those guys the football. And then you have a play caller, Mike Bobo, who will put together, I know, a great plan. We've had 2 weeks now to get ready without number 19 in a game plan or in practice. So you find ways to create those explosives. You find ways to have other guys step up. And we got to go back. Oscar Demp was a high talented recruit coming in. So he's a good player in his own right. And it's just hard because everybody or every tight end will be kind of compared to Brock Bowers. But I think if Oscar was on any other team, he'd be considered one of the top players on their offense. So I think coming into this game, they'll be just fine, man. They're going to find ways to still move the rock. They're going to find ways to create those matchups that they need. And it's still going to be an offense right now that's averaging 40 points. I still don't think that's going to change.
Shock, tell me though, is it in a quarterback's head when you lose your favorite target, a guy that you rely on that you know is dependable, and he's not there? I mean, is that still in the quarterback's head as you're playing the game?
Yeah, no doubt about it. Because I think you can go into a game and have a game plan of, okay, here are my reads, here are the things I got to go through, here are my checks, here are my auto, whatever it is. But then when you get into the game and there's a 3rd and 5, and you say, okay, where's the dude I know that's gonna get open? Where's the dude I know if I get one-on-one, he can win? Or if they playing zone coverage, I know he's smart enough to find the zone area. And for a long time, we know when we needed it, 19 has been the dude to do it. So I think, yeah, once you get in the game, Carson's gonna be like, okay, where's 19? Can I find a way to get him the ball? Then he's got to realize, oh, now I really have to go through my progressions and reads instead of saying, well, I know what the read tells me, but I know 19 over here versus this linebacker is a bad matchup. I think he'll have a better opportunity to look around and say, all right, I like Lad versus this guy, or I like Marcus Rosen versus this guy, or Oscar's, on a smaller corner. There's gonna be opportunities where he can find those matchups he likes and he can go win.
Russ, the defensive line for Florida has a player well over 400 pounds. How do you play against that kind of size and that kind of girth? Now, he doesn't play every down, obviously, but
Yeah.
when he's on the field, you know he's on the field. He's so massive.
Well, you're not going to move him, and I mean, at the end of the day, you're just not going to run the. Well, there it is. You're not going to run the ball directly at that guy because you're just not going to move him out of the way. At the end of the day, I would rather block that guy than a guy who's 6'3", 315 and can move because he's not going anywhere. You know where he's going to be. So, I think that guy, he obviously does something well for him, just clogging the middle up. But I don't think he's a huge challenge for the line just because you know where that dude's going to be. I do think the key for Georgia is going to be the flip side of that this week. They've got to stop the Florida run game. Florida, Mertz has been a good quarterback this year, but he's effective when they are able to run the ball and they're balanced. So Kirby has done such a great job throughout his career of taking away something an offense likes to do. So I think it's going to be the focus we watch early. What does he do to shut down that Florida run game that they love so much and make Mertz beat you? Make him make plays from the pocket. Make him throw the ball down the field. So that D-line for both sides, that's where this game is going to be won or lost. I promise you that.
All right, I'm going to take your last thing here. I'm going to take because Russ is on his way to Jacksonville, so we got to let him go. I'm going to take your pulse here. What's your confidence level of the Dogs going into Jacksonville and coming home victorious?
I feel pretty good about it. I mean, this is a team, and the reason why I feel good about it is not much as of when I look at it is about Florida. I think it's about this team. And you look at the way they played on the road at Auburn. You think about having to come back at home versus South Carolina. You think having some things happen early against you versus Vanderbilt. I think you have shown the ability to go through some adverse situations and come out the other end of it. So this team understands what it means to have to fight themselves within a ball game to go get a W or to play better in the second half. And I just think on the other side, Florida hasn't been consistent enough and go get those wins like Georgia. Like Georgia's been up and down too. They had some slow starts. They've had some games where you look like the other team is playing really well, but they find a way to get it done in the second half. And Florida, on the other hand, they've had some games where they haven't been able to do that. So for me, the confidence lies in the way I've seen Georgia kind of rebound after having a tough quarter or a tough half and be able to come back and do it. Whereas Florida, they struggled at times, even though they just, have that loss, they're still having an issue with, obviously finishing ball games. So they need this ball game. I know they only got one loss inside the SEC, but they want this as much as anybody, but they just haven't been consistent enough for me to feel a big concern facing a team like Georgia who has done it.
Yep. And Florida has a special place for all of us who've grown up as Georgia fans and watched them. My wife talks about some of her worst memories in college would be going to Jacksonville with 7-0, 6-0, whatever written on their car windows going down, than having to put a 1 on there and drive all the way back. We lived through the Spurrier era where Florida was very dominant on us, but Kirby has changed that. He's changed the mentality. He's changed the mindset. And when this team for Georgia goes in this year, we've seen it every week. They seem to play to the level of their competition to some respect. And for Georgia this week, Florida's got one loss in the SEC. So guess what, by the way? They're telling their guys right now, hey, we still control our own destiny. If we beat Georgia, we're going to run it out. We can make it to the SEC championship game. Typically, Kirby Smart coach teams rise to the occasion when their backs are against the wall, and they are a little bit right now. Bowers is out. Truss is out. We didn't look good against South Carolina. We struggled against Vandy. You got this problem. You got that problem. Florida's got Mertz. They got to run a game. Yada, 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 yada.
Yada, yada, yada. Yeah.
All right. Well, that makes me feel better. I love the energy you guys are bringing today, and let's keep it up as we head into Saturday. Georgia and Florida from Jacksonville, 3:39, I think, is the official kick time.
Hey, Scott,
yeah.
I think Russ is going to actually get to the stadium before you, which nobody ever does. So he's already going to beat you there.
Hey, 11:30 for the airtime for your coverage of Georgia football here on the Bulldog Sports Network. It's Georgia Florida week. It's a great time to be alive. Guys, thanks so much, and we'll see you next week. Go Dogs.
Go Dogs.
Go Dogs.